I was just thinking to myself about what happened with Charlie Kirk, and I was watching a Douglas Murray video, and he was talking about the shooting, and it occurred to me, like, I wonder if I was to ask a leftist, one that cheered after he was assassinated, it's like I wonder if they really just, I mean, they're just that some of these people are that selfish and that short-sighted, where, like, what would be obvious to us, like, it's obvious that it's not good when somebody gets assassinated uh, for wrongthink. That immediately my mind has implications like, whoa, somebody got killed because they weren't thinking the right way. Somebody got killed because they decided to think about, or took, like, overthinking. And the implications, therefore, are they're catastrophic. They're everybody will be affected by this. But I think, to be honest, there are some people out there with such a narrow band of focus, with such a narrow bandwidth of intellect and just for information. They have a narrow bandwidth, and it's a super, narrow bit that they actually, um, a super narrow bit of information they're actually looking at. So it's like certain ideologies, philosophies, people, ways of life just may as well not even exist to these people. And when they see Charlie Kirk get shot, I don't think it even occurs to them the the ramifications of that. The implications that if he can be shot for what he's thinking about, I can be shot for what I'm thinking about. You can be shot for what you're thinking about. Um, and there will be people out there that will say good, good, and laugh and dance on your grave. And I think those people, I mean, honestly, they kind of revealed themselves. It's very much so a mask off moment. When somebody, I mean, a lot of people woke up, and a lot of liberals, a lot of Democrats that are just like, well, I can't do this anymore. But, at first I was pissed off, but now I think to myself, like, like Douglas Murray brought up a good point. Why, the debate it's so important, debate. And I was thinking to myself, like, everybody's so siloed off, and some people really are this stupid. Some people really are that stupid. And when there's no discourse, when there's no debate, they they never hear the right way. Not everybody is as curious. It's like I've been a victim of this my entire life, since I can remember, where I just assumed that everything was as obvious to everyone else as it was to me. That that everybody else learned as fast as I did. That everybody else grasped things as quickly as I did. And there I also had my weak points too. There have been a few times in my life where I just couldn't seem to get something. Like long division, I don't think I ever mastered that, and it's a pretty simple thing, but I don't think I think I just gave up on it after I left that fourth grade or whatever. I was like, yeah, fuck that. I don't know how to do that shit. But like, but there are other things where something would just seem so obvious to me, and I'd be the only one that thought it was obvious or even noticed. And without debate, like, it just occurred to me how gargantuan of a problem it is if people aren't talking. Like, I mean, like, even I thought when Charlie Kirk talked about, like, look, I'm out here talking because when people quit talking, they start fighting. Oliver Cromwell said that. Uh, hopefully we can keep these men talk. When talking fails, that's when men go for their swords and their muskets, or their swords and their guns. And he said, you know, pray we can keep them talking. Pray we can avoid a civil war, which they didn't. But all of a sudden, his words, the weight, just wham, just hit home. Immediately, I pulled my boom mic up and put my headphones on. I mean, the thought occurred to me, and I was like, ooh, I cannot allow this thought to escape into the ether. I mean, it just, I guess Charlie Kirk, the dude had intuition, and there's certain things that when people say it, you hand wave it. And obviously he believed vehemently in what he said, and when people quit talking, that's when they start shooting. And I dismissed it as hyperbole, demagoguery. Not at all. And it just occurred, I just realized that, because my dad's always said, half the country has always been communist, half the country is below average intelligence. And all of a sudden, that really scares me. That really, really scares me. I mean, honestly, I think somebody once said that America really hasn't to fear invasion or being conquered by another people. If our destruction comes about, we will be the authors of that destruction. And I guess I've always known that, but I suppose I just didn't realize how right, like Ronald Reagan, every generation you have to defend liberty. I mean, it's like I keep getting tripped up by that habit of assuming that everybody feels the same way I do about, forgiveness or morality or what's politically acceptable, what's acceptable in polite. I just assume that everybody is as civilized as I am. And that really, I mean, I can't tell you how many times that has, and it always takes me like a couple years before I'm like, oh, wait a second, that's why this is such, it's so easy to just assume everybody thinks the same as you, everybody feels the same as you, that everybody can even understand certain theories and certain concepts. There are a lot of concepts that people just can't understand. I mean, children can't understand the concept of abstraction, that when a person leaves your sight, that they're no longer, that they don't exist. They only exist when you can see them. That's a childhood developmental stage, but there are, others, there are much higher psychological development that, we achieve, and it takes us till 25. And, I mean, it's obvious, and it kind of goes without saying that a lot of people aren't going to reach some of that higher thinking. A lot of people are going to stay down in the instinctual, primordial ooze, so to speak, of their animalistic, nature. And I don't know. The weight of everything sort of hit me that ooh man. There's a reason why debate is so important, because some people, they're not going to discover these ideas or have these thoughts and these sensibilities unless we tell them, unless we bring it up around them, unless we say, hey, this is how you do this, because they've never thought of it. And we can't, it's not graceful of us to expect everybody to be on our level. It is what it is. And I'm not saying I'm Albert Einstein either, but even if I'm just average, there's still people that, that aren't going to be able to understand certain higher forms of thinking. It is what it is. It's a fact of life, whether we like it or not. It's just something I was chewing on.